Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's Health Tech Entrepreneurs Meetup. Our speaker today is Dr. Amir Mambachi, and he's going to talk about strategic partnerships, collaborating with research institutions as an entrepreneur. So just a reminder that to everyone, this is a place where we can learn about how to apply concepts that we're learning from all the webinars and seminars and office hours out there to real life. It's a chance for everyone to discuss their own experience and share tips and advice. So let me know if there's any topics you'd like to hear about in future, or if you'd like to speak about a topic, that would be awesome. So let me know and keep sending me feedback. We're also, we have sponsors this year. Oh, new person. We have sponsors this year. Let me put up my slide. Oops. Hold on. I would like to thank our sponsors, Fulton Bank, which works with several of our MDC's portfolio companies, Cooley, IP law firm, and TEDCO, an economic development organization in Maryland. Oh, that's my cat. So thank you to our sponsors. We'll start with our usual introductions. We'll go. I'm gonna go down the list on my right, and so when I call your name, and if you'd like to introduce yourself, please unmute and let us know who you are, what you're working on. If you have any needs or anything you can offer to the group, this is a good time to bring it up as well. Amir, I'm going to skip you because I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself later on. So I can start. My name's Neo Gamo. I've been running these meetups since June of last year, just as the pandemic started. I'm founder and CEO of NeuroSonics Medical. We are developing an ultrasound device for minimally invasive neurosurgery. I'm also the vice president of business development at the MDC Studio. I'll let Gil say a bit more about the MDC Studio when it's his turn, but it's a startup studio focused on dedicated to building health and medical technology companies. Great. So I will call on Paula.
Oh, hi there. I'm Maryland-based. I'm in the backyard of National Cancer Institute. At their behest, I came out of retirement, which I sold my last software company to the Carlyle Group for a combined $520 million. So after that, I retired, joined our board, did the do-gooder, cashed-out entrepreneur thing, and came across our breast cancer center and the distinct needs that breast cancer patients, products that they needed that the hospital doesn't make available and you can't find at CVS. So over the past 11 years, I've been taking the side effects of cancer and finding solutions for mouth sores, for appetite loss, for metallic taste in mouth, which ultimately leads to cachexia, which in cancer is starvation before death. We're looking for a $2 million SBIR grant. Again, at their behest, the former president, thinks that our proprietary method to reduce metal leaching into foods that in-treatment patients are not allowed to ingest or apply topically. And we're just now seeking our first seed round of $1 million and intend to use that non-dilutive grant to really put the stamp on the company as we commercialize.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rudolph?
Yes, hi, Rudolph Dahl. I'm president of Global Holdings Corporation. We do international infrastructure development. One of our main focuses right now is trying to handle issues with COVID-19. We're doing monitoring and planning for countries, emergency hospital facilities, like when I designed for DOD a few years ago, 72 hours, 500 beds, chemical biological warfare compliance. This is before COVID-19, so that fit into our thing. One of our portfolio companies is heavy into electronics, and we have a process for monitoring and also treating various diseases. We can do SARS and other COVID-19s. We're just getting the frequencies for COVID-19. We'll be able to treat it. What we do is at the DNA level, everything vibrates at its own frequency, and we're able to destroy various cells selectively. So We're doing some fundraising right now to expand into be able to get. We have to design for each of these different phases of COVID-19. So if I disappear, Pfizer and all, I'm putting a hit team out on it because we'll be able to fix these non-vaccine lives.
Great, thank you. Brendan?
Oh, yeah. Oh, hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't. I've lost you. Oh, yeah. Hi. I better turn my camera on. Hi. Am I supposed to introduce myself?
Oh, yes, please.
All right. Okay. Sorry, I just got it. I'm Brendan McAdams. I'm co-founder of a company called Expertscape. You can find it at expertscape.com. We identify and objectively rank medical expertise by specific topic using PubMed. I'm based in Baltimore, and we're generating revenue, but we're bootstrapped.
Wonderful. Alan?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hello, I'm Alan Alfano, currently working as Director of Technical Applications for a company called Bullfrog AI Holdings. We're using a pretty cool AI machine learning platform to harmonize really high dimensional data sets and make better, more insightful decisions about drug development and clinical trials. And I'm also working with TEDCO as a RB mentor. So a couple different things in parallel.
Wonderful. Anthony?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anthony Camarada. I have a company called Startup Cannon, which is actually a contract CFO and controller service. So I'm on the finance and accounting side of startups, and always just kind of looking for people to help connect to my network as well, you know, when people need to figure out where to go. So good to be here.
Great, thank you. Elon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah, my name is Elon Haliasus, and I attended Johns Hopkins University 2017 and 2018 in the CBID program, so Center for Bioengineering, Innovation and Design. Right now, I'm a project engineer at Stryker's Spine Division in Leesburg, Virginia. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Chrissy?
Hi, I'm Chrissy. I'm currently a postdoc at Johns Hopkins in microfluidics lab. Have some technology I'm interested in seeing about translational potential. It's extremely sensitive to rare biomarker detection. So we're looking at possible applications for cancer diagnostics or sepsis, bacterial ID/AST. And looking forward to learning more about this. Meet up.
Cool. Cyrus?
Yeah, my name is Cyrus. It's Ahmad Mogadam. Background is mechanical engineering. I started a product development company 15 years ago. We're 21 strong in Harford County, just north of Baltimore. We get involved with all types of products development, including medical devices, surgical tools, and other things. It's nice to meet everyone.
Great, thank you. Dean? I think Dean disappeared. Galen?
Hi, yep, my name's Galen. I'm a former Hopkins undergrad student, now current Hopkins medical student. I founded a company, WeGo Foundation. We use telepresence robotics to improve accessibility for vulnerable populations, specifically pediatric inpatients and seniors in senior living communities currently. I'm just excited to be here and kind of listen in. And I saw this email blast go out, so I'm excited to learn from everyone.
Oh, wonderful. I think Gil is on a call. Hamid?
Hey, good afternoon.
Hi.
My name is Mambachi. I'm in the health sciences, life sciences space. I've been in tech transfer for the past decade. I work with PIs and physicians and trying to commercialize intellectual assets that they're developing at the university level.
Wonderful. Let's see, John?
Yes, hi. I assume you meant me.
Yes.
My name is John Birch, and I live in Lawrence, Kansas.
Oh.
I'm actually an angel investor, and I'm particularly interested right now in the opportunity that might be created by to have been created by the final rules from ONC and CMS a year ago. That is basically going to liberate patient data at long last. And I'm researching the possibility that by making personal health records available now using those APIs, that it might make it a lot simpler for digital software developers working in either patient-facing or clinician-facing apps to do what they want to do without worrying so much about the data. And I got I'm actually not sure how I learned about this webinar, but it looked interesting, so I'm signing in.
Oh, wonderful. Welcome.
Hey.
Joelle?
Everyone, I'm Joelle Lavoie. I'm calling from Toronto in Canada. So I am the business development manager for the Can Health Network, and we're basically creating an integrated marketplace to support innovation in healthcare in Canada.
Wonderful. Mika? Oh.
There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Mika Standard, and I'm Senior Director for Major Gifts at Children's National Hospital Foundation. It's a top 10 children's hospital in the country. We're located in Washington, D.C., where I raise money for pediatric research, technology, and programs and other innovations. And I recently joined the MDC Verite Impact Fund as an outreach director. And that fund is a joint initiative between MDC Studio and Verite Opportunity Fund, which provides capital to support innovation that's in its earliest development. And so I'm just here to listen and learn.
Wonderful. Naveed?
Hi everyone, my name is Naveed Google. I am a CEO and founder of Spinesonics. We develop therapeutic ultrasound arrays. Is highly cost effective and the most optimum output signaling of harmonic free we produce. So I'm here to learn more about this event and meeting new people. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Wayne?
Hi, Wayne Sternberger. I'm a systems engineer, spent 40 plus years at Johns Hopkins APL, and I have a joint appointment at anesthesiology and critical care medicine at Hopkins Med. I'm co-founder of Block Synop, and a small team that's about a year old. We're developing for commercialization a neural blockade monitor to provide objective quantitative readings for clinicians about the effectiveness of neural blockades.
Great, thank you. I think that's everyone who's able to speak right now. Did I miss anyone? All right, let's move on to the main part of our meetup today. So I would like to introduce Dr. Amir.
Yes.
Can we see? Okay. Anyway, so Dr. Amir Mambachi, he is an assistant. Oh, there you are. So Amir is my very good friend, and he's an assistant professor of neurosurgery, mechanical engineering, biomedical engineering, and electrical and computer engineering at the Johns Hopkins University. He's also the technical advisor for my startup, NeuroSonics Medical. He's also the former founder and CEO of Spinesonics Medical. And so he's really been, working at the intersection of, academic research, entrepreneurship, also working with government and other industry and companies. And so he's going to share his experiences, tips, and lessons learned over his career. So Amir, please tell us about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
My journey and how I got to where I am right now. Wow, that's a long question. I can talk about myself forever. We all do, right? So I guess to start off with, thanks for an introduction. Thanks for having me. It's pleasure being here. What I really enjoy is the fact that you bring all these amazing talents together and like expertise, and I really enjoyed listening to everybody's pitches. And I guess what brought me to where I am today was wanting to make a difference, wanting to be an ordinary person who is trying to make an impact, right? And as part of that, I've changed a lot of different problems that I was trying to solve, and a lot of them were bad problems. A lot of them I was, really kind of egocentric, didn't want to accept that they were bad problems. And a lot of them that were good problems, I made mistakes, I failed, I learned from it. And it happens that among the many problems that I enjoyed working on, few of them were really good problems. Few of them, I did few things right in the right place, right time. And, there I am right now.
Wonderful. So did you always want to be a researcher or entrepreneur or both?
So I would say for the half of my life, since I turned into undergrad, you don't need to count my age, but when I went as a freshman and as a sophomore, I really started looking for mentors and role models. And, as an immigrant kid who, was barely speaking English, just went to University of Toronto and was really trying to look out there to see what are the possibilities. I was really, lucky to be given an opportunity to intern at Harvard Medical School as part of a summer for part of my undergrad, and went there and I interned for, Ali Khaddam Hosseini's lab, and it was just when he came out of Bob Langer's group. And so as an 18-year-old kid, I noticed somebody who's a biomedical engineer who has 1,000 patents, 30 companies, and, that really, attracted my mind. And I said, well, I want to be like this person. So I think little I know back then, what is the difference between them? Because, I rarely knew as an 18-year-old, what is a nature paper or what is a paper versus a patent, right? But what I did know is that I kind of wanted to work alongside surgeons and kind of create something that will help the patients, those patients. And I think really I kind of got a little bit of a glimpse of impact and what it means to make an impact. And then kind of dived in, and I felt a few times I learned about what is paper, what is patent, what is teaching, what is research. And I essentially kind of tried to define myself from there. But kind of thinking back to my childhood, also my dad was always an entrepreneur and a businessman. And my uncle was a spine surgeon. And so I remember them talking competitively about which fields are better. And I decided to be a peacemaker. And I thought, well, you don't have to fight. I can be right in the middle. So, being a scientist and an entrepreneur and an engineer in the healthcare, I think, it's kind of a niche, but so a lot of things we'll talk about today is not necessarily applicable to other areas in entrepreneurial world. But I guess that's the niche that made me happy to stick to it. So.
Wonderful. And I know that, you and I are around the same age, and I think things are changing, but I remember, when I was going through graduate, undergrad, working in labs and graduate schools, it was kind of, you feel like you're not supposed to talk about business as an academic researcher. Did you ever experience that? And if so, how did you deal with that?
Oh, absolutely. I experienced that a lot, as you know, some of the stories, and you all know, a lot of other colleagues here know. I think I heard Elon is on the call. So the center that we were doing a lot of teaching, Center for Bioengineering Innovation and Design. It's a fabulous program. It's, we used to teach, and the center is still teaching. I'm just doing less teaching, but CBIT teaches, has a world-class team that teaches innovation and design. Whether it's in the undergrad level, they teach capstone design, they teach problem solving, or whether it's the master's program. It's a one-year intense program that you learn about problem solving in the world, world health settings, or like teaching hospitals here. And it was just exciting. We would keep going, and the notion of innovation and invention and entrepreneurship, what's there not to like, right? But I did observe that, interestingly, a lot of academics tended to look at that a little differently. It just wasn't checking the box in terms of regular academia. Where is your NIH R01 grant? Where is your paper? Is this peer reviewed really, right? And that's kind of like when it was to my face. I noticed that, not everybody thinks the same way as I do. And that's okay. That's the beauty of the world. People are allowed to think differently. And, I think it was a tough journey at the time, because it was awakening for me. I'm kind of like, whoa, I want to do this. And a lot of people were saying, oh, you started a company, great. But as an academic who they were in the lab all day, they were looking at me and they were trying to put me in one of the categories. And, I had a few people telling me, oh, you probably will be a good teacher because you can teach well. You probably will be a good businessman, which is their sign of saying you're not a good scientist. So I think back then I started noticing that, oh wow, like there are these boxes, right? But I think the world is changing, and I'm excited to see a lot of institutions are starting to pioneer ways for scientists to get out there and do entrepreneurial pathways. I think Wayne is a perfect example, right? Like at APL, I would tend to think APL is more bureaucratic than Hopkins, but sorry, it's being recorded. Like, can you cut that part? But but ironically, they are thinking about pathways, and they're enabling and facilitating some of these transitions. So.
Yeah, and then how did you decide to start your first company, which I believe was based on your PhD work? And how did you learn about how to start a business the first time?
Short answer is naiveness. The longer answer is it's just what came to me naturally. So I remember when we immigrated to Canada as a family, my dad was the entrepreneur, so he was working 24/7. And his dream for his immigrant kids were, it's really a lot of sweat equity here. I really want you guys to have a good work-life balance, quote unquote work-life balance. So, he really thought that, by encouraging us to go into science and academia and universities, that's the place that are books, that are less politics, there's less drama, and it's all about science. And it's, again, quote unquote work-life balance. So being 18-year-old, I listened to him. I pursued, a master's degree and a PhD degree, a postdoc degree, and being in academia. And then, all along things, the stuff I had learned, maybe by absorption, maybe by osmosis, kind of made an impact on me. I remember my very first job as a high schooler. My first summer job was to sell a few, condo units, right, as a realtor. So I was originally assisting somebody, and whether that made an impact, I usually don't put that on my CV, especially my academic CV, but I'm sure that made an impact, right? The ability to sell something, whether it's your science or whether it's your company, or whether it's a car salesmanship, right? That's a skill set, whether everybody likes that or not, that's a different story. So I always wanted to be an academic, and that's kind of what was kind of expected from an immigrant family, and I always did love science myself, but deep down I knew I want to do more. And I think the moment of truth was when I noticed Langer and Ali, and I noticed, whoa, there's something behind this, behind all of these pipetting, there's a lot of failure, but there's one good paper. Behind a lot of papers, there may be one good invention. And behind a lot of inventions that people filed, there may be one granted patent. Behind a lot of granted patents are one good company. Out of every 10 companies, one company is successful. So chances are slim statistically, but seeing that big picture kind of always pushed me to go back. And I hope I'm not being too generic in my responses, because you asked me about my first company, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think what happened there was, I essentially came back from Harvard back to Toronto, started my grad studies, as a PhD student. And, I remember having a wonderful PhD advisor, Richard Cobalt. And at the time, this year, in December, he's going to be 90-year-old. So knock on wood. So we had quite a bit of an age difference, and he was retired already then. But I think his way of thinking was very different from other professors. I used to see that a lot of other professors are more competitive. They're more about number of papers, or more about they had a grant and they had a project, a milestone to deliver. Whereas this 80-something-year-old professor would show up in the lab and sit next to you and be like, "How's it going?" And at the beginning, I was getting uncomfortable, he's here a lot, but what I tend to notice is that it wasn't about him. He was making it about us. And I think I noticed going to him after 3 months saying that, well, this problem you gave me to solve, I think this will solve the problem. And I remember him thinking for 30 seconds, giving me the silence treatment. And I was thinking, whoa, this guy has been in the field forever. And I'm just proposing a naive solution, and he's just giving me the silence treatment. So after 30 seconds of silence and looking at the ceiling, he was like, "I can't believe I didn't think of that." And I'm like, okay, what does that mean, right? What I'm supposed to do? It was write it up. And then we wrote it up. We submitted that to the university, University of Toronto, Tech Transfer Office. And they essentially sat on it and they were like, well, how do we know it's an industry relevant problem? So I went to them and I kind of did all this analysis. And sorry for some of you guys who know me really well, this is a repetitive story, but I went back to the university and I said, well, essentially, there are all these different industries working on this thing. And the response was like, oh, sounds like it's a competitive landscape. And so they just didn't want it to fall for that professional, right? It was I now understand from a corporate perspective, they were doing their own cost benefit analysis. So, I was really discouraged, but I kept going. Like that perseverance kept me going. And I think that's what paid off. And somewhere along the PhD, I think by the end of second year, I was encouraged to do a summer internship, and I ended up doing a practicum, a summer internship in Germany, in a company called Stryker. They're famous for producing and selling surgical navigation, surgical GPS companies, surgical GPS devices. And little I knew that along the way that I was traveling and learning language and culture, I actually kind of was able to absorb some of the industry language. So I came back. I applied for the same grants that I had applied and gotten rejected for 2 times. We applied the same grant, wrote it a little differently. We got funded. And that was the first $50,000 from Ontario Centers of Excellence. And when it rains, it pours. So Ontario Brain Institute called us the other day and they said, oh, like we saw your name as somebody who got money from OCE. Would you are still in need of funding? And I said, who says no to funding, right? So I think with Ontario Brain Institute and Ontario Centers of Excellence, we got enough funding to hire somebody else or 2 other people, and they helped me kind of bring more money. We got NSERC, which is equivalent to NIH, Canadian equivalent to NIH here. And we got something called I2I, Idea 2 Innovation Grant. And with that, it was a full force company. And then it was me and then 2 other full-time staff. And then we started recruiting part-time staff and volunteers. That's how you get stuff done. You bootstrap, right? And yeah, and I think if it probably wasn't for my background, trying to persevere and get things done, or like, I really resented when things don't get finished. So I kind of like, do my best to keep pushing forward. And I think, my 80-something-year-old professor saw that in me and kind of like, encouraged me to kind of keep pushing. And, unlike many other academics, because he was at a different stage in his academia, he never saw this as a competition. He actually saw this as, great, Amir's like developing something. And if it's like, scientifically novel, there's a novelty to publish too. So science is subjective in its definition, but different people think about it differently. And I think I was lucky to work with the right person.
Mm-hmm. That must have been a really exciting time for you. And do you feel that your academic training has helped you as an entrepreneur and vice versa?
I would say so. They've all given me different backgrounds. So I would tend to say we all have our own strengths and weaknesses. So as an academic, I learned a lot about how to pitch and how to pitch, verbally, and how to have conversations. I noticed that it's not about me, right? You get up on the stage, you don't say there I am, you say there you are, right? It's about them. It's about what they want to hear, what funding agency you're talking to. They have different funding agencies that have different missions. So you don't want to get out there, pitch a really futuristic, ambitious things to NIH, which I did, and I failed. And you want to understand who you're talking with and why they are there, right? So I think that's the entrepreneurial skill sets that, I would say few skill sets I learned there. And academia at the beginning, it was a little difficult for me because, I just wasn't sitting down to write a lot. And that's what you do as an academic. You read and write all day. You read papers, you write papers, you read grants, you write grants. And I think looking now, I think compared to 5 years ago, I'm way more of a detail-oriented writer. And I hope I'm a better communicator than I was before. So, and I think if that's accomplished, then whether I'm considered an academic or an entrepreneur, I'm a better person. And that helps with personal life and professional life overall.
Awesome. Hamid, do you have a question?
Yeah, Amir, great stories. You've accomplished a lot. Really, really impressive, situation that you put yourself into. I was wondering if you could comment a little bit on how you were able to navigate the conflict of interests with the university while you were spinning out these companies.
Absolutely. Thanks, Hamid. Thanks for the kind words. I don't think I have a good recipe to navigate that. I think it ultimately depends on the university. And I wouldn't lie, academic institutions are tough to do entrepreneurial settings there. Their mission is very different, right? Their mission is research, education, and they say translation. But when it comes to translation, well, what is translation? Some people think of translation as clinical translation. Some people think of it as commercial translation. And yeah, when it comes to commercial translation, what is commercial translation? So let's put ourselves in the shoes of a tech transfer office for a second. They like to see their numbers going up, right? Numbers being like, well, we got, if this year we got 500 disclosures, great. It means we have amazing scientists, but let's keep pushing that to 1,000 disclosures. Next year, if they have double that, then they can claim that they have a better ecosystem, right? Although it says more about the scientists. When it comes to their numbers, they also care about their cost benefit. We filed for this few and it got paid off at the end. I don't know of any tech transfer that's like really not in the red financially, right? They're always like, they spend money on patents and like rarely they pay off. So I would say the way to go about conflict of interest is really work closely with the person you have. Different people are different. Some people would much rather have guidelines and read the books, which Hopkins is amazing at. You don't barely even see a person. Like you have to go to the guidelines, you have to submit through something through the portal. Whereas Toronto, I just used to walk to a building, meet with Ian, and he would tell me, yeah, if you're doing something, you need to like submit this early beforehand, or just do it then. And I would also say that timings were a little different. So what I'm talking about my PhD is we're talking about 2010 onward, right? For 2010 to 2015. So back then to work with a company, there was a lot of encouragement, right? Because like there was a curve of wanting to do translational activities. There's still that interest in academic institutions. The interest still exists, though I think the institutions are much more, they've been burned 3 more times. So what they do is that they want to know it all. Like, if you're getting money as a sponsor for an activity, they want to say, well, have you run it by legal? Have you considered this? Have you considered that? So all in all, I would say right timing, right place, right people to work with, right? It goes back to that. You will encounter a conflict of interest. There's no doubt if you're running between academia and entrepreneurial or industry, you will encounter that. But I think sorry that if this is not, if this sounds like a generic response, but working with the right people, the right environment, that's what will make it happen. So we'll get it done.
Yeah, because a lot of the pushback that I get at the university setting, because I'm trying to spin out a lot. I'm trying to help these PIs, create the companies, and they want to. They're motivated. They're entrepreneurial. But the COI from our end is, how can you justify the fact that you're a full-time professor and then you're running a company on a full-time basis? So just trying to get your perspective on that.
Right. So I think in that case, I'm happy to sit down with you, maybe like, talk about your specific scenario, but I can tell you a personal story. I think Neil kind of remembers this. So when I was teaching at CBIT, again, Elon can attest to that. There's a lot of teams, right? There's a lot of design teams, and you tend to sit in different design teams. And my job was an educator. My job wasn't to solve all the problems. And, by the notion of just educating students, you end up, suggesting inventions here and there. So you end up having a lot of invention disclosures to the university. And obviously your name is on some of them, not all of them, but so if your name was on all of the, inventions going out the door in your classroom, that's a problem. But, but it's natural to kind of like be an inventor in some of these invention disclosures. And but it was not about me, it was the students. And for those inventions to make it to the market, it required hustling, right? It required perseverance. And ultimately, I was just there to suggest something. It would probably, at best case, it would have made it as a claim set, right? But it was the hustling, it was the execution that would made it all the way through. And so it was about the students. So obviously, as an educator, my job was to put this in front of tech transfer. And one scenario I had is that one person tech transfer kind of questioned that thing. And I remember having a conversation with this person, and this person was like, "What are you doing? You're on like too many inventions like here. Like you're like, are you pumping up a lot of inventions here? Is that about you?" And the best answer I can give is that if the perception is built, there's not much you can do about that, right? But if the other person sees you on their team, so that you're bringing something to the table and they're bringing something to the table, it's a much better situation. Fortunately, there are certain things you can do so that the other person feels you're both on the same team. But unfortunately, if the other person's mind is set, sometimes you just have to move on and accept the reality and just like, make your passion and channel it into another avenue, as sad as it sounds. So hopefully this wasn't a horrible answer. Hopefully it wasn't discouraging.
No, thank you. That helps. Thank you.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question. So now you're obviously an academic researcher, but you're also working closely with DARPA with your big grant. And you're also working with companies as part of that project, like Sonic Concepts. You're also involved, you're also, an advisor, a technical advisor for, my startup. So what would you feel are, the biggest challenges working with all these different groups?
Personalities, right? You're on a daily basis. Yeah, absolutely. You're on a daily basis, you're working with different people, right? And I think my biggest problem is, again, as a scientist, we were never trained for communications, right? I used to kind of judge some of the senior leaderships in academia, and I would be like, this person doesn't remember my name. But, now that I'm kind of starting to see some of the realities, I'm starting to see that, well, as scientists, we're not trained to be the best communicators, and like you get a grant and they put you in charge of running a 70 people show, and you're kind of like, okay, well, what can I do to make the best thing? I would say that my biggest challenge is when I'm trying to suggest something that's in the best interest of the other person and myself, but they just don't want to listen, right? And you can't convince everybody else. Over quote unquote years, I don't want to say that in front of some of the other more experienced, seasoned colleagues, but over the years, I've learned that, I kind of need to understand who I'm talking to and where they're coming from. So, if I'm an accommodator in personality, right? Some people are an analyst, some people are assertive, right? So I've gone into meetings that, I keep saying the same thing and thinking in the clouds, and the other person just doesn't look convinced, right? So finally I learned to ask, okay, looks like we're not on the same page, what do you need from me to kind of consider this? And their answer was show me a table, show me a data. I'm kind of next time I show the table, I didn't even have to talk about it. It was an email, right? So as an accommodator talking to an analyst, that helped. As an accommodator talking to an assertive, there's no shortage of assertive personalities in academia. So what I noticed is when you go to a meeting and the other person wants to talk forever, which I'm doing right now, instead of trying to get a word in edgewise, what I can do is that I can let them talk, and I can kind of guide the conversation by channeling what they care about into what the both of us together can accomplish. Having said this, I'm not successful all the time. There are many instances that I know a person, a collaborator, a student is doing something that's not in their interest, and my job is to say it a few times, and I am guilty of sometimes trying too hard to say it many times, and if they want to fall off the cliff, I think I've also learned that sometimes you need to let them try, right? My job as an educator is kind of give my advice and let them try, right? Failing is part of inventions, and I think there's a quote by Elon Musk about failure, we want to create an environment that people fail and fail comfortably. If you're not failing fast, it means you're not innovating enough. So did I answer the question? Or
yeah, so it sounds like understand, no matter who you're talking to, understanding what their priorities are and how they like to communicate and process information, or at least being aware of these differences.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's very important when you work with different people, different companies, different academic groups, to kind of understand where they're coming from. And sometimes I think what also helps is to kind of it never helps when it's a one-to-one situation. When you're saying something, the other person is saying something else. It sometimes helps that, if you're saying something that the other person is not saying, you could kind of hold on, let some time pass, talk to them differently, or have some colleagues talk to them if you're in a team settings, right? Because some people work really greatly with each other, and I think ultimately we have a job to do, right? It's never personal. So it's a matter of getting what we sign up to do and getting it done. So I think that helps me staying more curious than angry. And I think we definitely were in a contractual obligation a few months ago I think we were in the same call with you, I remember you asking me like, how did you not get angry over that situation? And I think I remained, very curious all throughout, like trying to think what the other person is going through and what the other person is trying and what the other person doesn't feel they should try, right? So trying to understand what's going on in their perspective has really been helping me to stay sane. I don't know if I've been successful in doing whatever, I'm doing, but, at least staying sane to keep the ship going forward.
Yeah, and I think one thing I learned from you when I first started working with you as I transitioned out of academia was, before in academia, it was very clear what people want. They want publications, they want first or last author, they want grant funding and so on. But yeah, coming into the entrepreneurial world where, you're interacting with a lot of different groups and people and, just trying to find a win-win situation when your resources are scarce.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would say you said it really well. I think especially in the academic and especially in the entrepreneurial setting, your resources are scarce. So you need to bootstrap. You need to do anything that gets the job done. And it's rarely about you. Remember, companies change CEOs all the time, right? And we have Steve Jobs' famous example. He came out public and he was like, I'm not fit to do this job. Like from this day onward, somebody else, Tim Cook, will take over the company. So I think it's important to remember that's probably one of the main mistakes I made as part of my first company. But now I think I'm trying to do things differently. So, one recent example is that I kept telling one of our collaborators that we want certain things to be done. And, they're in a position contractually that they're reporting to us. But I kind of noticed, what I'm saying is not registering. And I could have taken it personal all day, right? And I could have kind of stick to that, to me being like, how come this person doesn't listen to me? So what I did is that, I got on a phone call instead of a Zoom with my co-PI, who's more senior to me, who is a surgeon, who has, a bigger cloud maybe than I do. And, as we we're having the same phone conversation, I wrote things as like in little notes and I gave it to him. He said the same things. The dude listened. And I could have said, oh, where are we about biases? Let's talk about that. I could have been taking it personal all day long. But, I came out of that call being like, the job got done. I'm happy. So I think it's important to know that when you start a company or when you start a lab, it's not about a one person. It's a problem if it's about one person, right? We need to create something that's larger than all of us combined. So,
Naveed, do you have a question?
Yeah, sure. I want to quickly ask about IP ownership by university when the company or research is done in university setting rather than a company on its own, and how it can be problematic or helpful down the road.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a really interesting topic. What specifically would you like to talk about that?
Does it help or does it helps basically in long run or in short run when the university owns the IP?
Yeah. So it depends, right? I've seen people who never wanted to share. They ended up going really fast at the beginning, but then they graduated. When I'm specifically talking about a few of my students, I advised them. And so they went fast and they went fast nowhere, right? So it's important to take a deep breath and really take an x-ray of where you are, right? Again, it's not about you as a person. It's about this entity that I'm starting. Does it need another co-founder? Does it need somebody who's bringing money? Does it need somebody who brings the resources? I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, heck no, I don't want my IP to be owned by companies. They went out there, they went to an incubator or accelerator, they give most of their company to that settings, right? So do they have control now? They don't, right? I've seen a lot of people sticking to their companies, sole ownership for years. They haven't gone much far, right? So it's about what you want out of it. And I've seen a scientist who keeps inventing, shares with university because this person is a scientist, and works with industry, big industries like Siemens and J&J, and they bought their licenses all the time. I mean, obviously, these people are, counter everything I said so far is counter examples to ordinary, right? So I don't want to give the wrong sense of a statistical. So not every scientist who invents J&J is knocking at their door, right? But there are some people who do that, right? All I'm trying to say here, point being that there's no recipe, right? And so I cannot say whether it's a good or bad thing to share IP with university. What I'm trying to say here is, you know, figure out what works best for you. And I think you're in the driver's seat. You know, like, don't be hesitant to make a decision. What's the worst case? It's a wrong decision, right? It's way better than sitting with indecision on something. Did I answer a question or?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that was great.
So Amir, I want to ask, what's something right that, like in retrospect, looking back at your journey, what's something right that you did and what's something wrong that you feel you did?
Most of the things I did was wrong. So I'm here to share my dirty laundry with the world publicly. You know, in fact, again, with Elon Musk quote, you know, if you're not failing, you're not really inventing or innovating. So I would say most things, I've done many things that are wrong. I'm usually the type that, because academia is like, there are check boxes, there are roadmaps, there are SOPs. I'm always shaking the boat. You know, I'm an academic who, there's a lot of, you know, people in administration that resent me because every day there's something about, there we go, Amir kind of did this again, right? And I'm trying, when you're trying to push the box, that always happens. There's nothing personal. They're trying to do their job. I'm trying to do my job, right? So have I done wrong things? A lot of them. I don't resent it though, and I don't. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't regret it though. When it comes to doing things right, I would say the best thing. Overall, the best things one person can do is listening. There's a lot. I'm recently starting to understand how many things people, how much things people are telling me, and I'm not understanding it, right? And I'm ignoring it, and I'm kind of like, you know, and I'm taking my own version out of that. So like recently, I'm getting into, you know, like trying to have a coach, and you know, trying to get some communication skills classes, and you know, like basically the basics of mirroring and you know, labeling, and trying to understand what the other person is saying. So I think the moment that I decide to make it about the other side, and the moment I try to listen more, every single time I've made an attempt to do that, something great has came out of that, right? And I think especially, I think, for example, DARPA is a perfect example. You know, I'm humbled that, you know, our science has been invested by Department of Defense, right? Multi-million-dollar, multi-institution, multi-year, but you know, it doesn't really say whether I'm a better scientist or worse scientist. I'm the same person, right? What it does say though is that when different people from different groups come together, wonderful things happen. So the story kind of goes back to 5 years ago when I was teaching at CBIT and I was mentoring students. And one of the best parts that I loved about it is, you know, going to surgeons and asking them, you know, what can we do for you? What is going wrong? What is it that you wish it was there that's not there right now? What problem do you have? We want to solve it. Almost like the same interviewing, you know, we did for the NSF Corps with you, Gil, and Stephen, right? The moments that we used to get to the stakeholders, the end users, and we were asking them open-ended questions, right? We would start with like super out there, non-relevant to the IEP questions, and we would just let them talk, right? So what have I done right? The few times that I've tried to listen well, I think those have always gone right well. So.
Wonderful. So what advice do you have for researchers who may want to become entrepreneurs? And then I'll ask you the reverse after.
Okay, so let me think about it. Advice for scientists who want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Don't be married to your inventions. You're not the center of the universe. You're not the center of the world. If you're solving something, you know, it may be a really good idea, but statistically, it's not the best idea, right? You know, an example I can give is recently Wayne was pitching to me and Nick, you know, my surgeon colleague, and the way he went about it, he was just like, he said, this is the problem, right? And nobody says, you know, back pain, you know, is bad. Like nobody says back pain is not a problem, right? You know, chances are most people here have experienced back pain at some point in their life, right? But when you get people on the same side, now automatically you're on the same team. And then, you know, I think the way he pitched it, which I really like, was like, you know, given my background and my hammer, this is what I could solve. Is this a bad idea, right? So I think if you, and I think maybe Wayne can share a little more than I do because he's gone through that journey, because I'm kind of considered an industry entrepreneur going into academia, but trying to envision myself in the scenario if I was a scientist trying to get out, I would say, you know, your science is a piece of the puzzle, right? Imagine looking back and when I was a child and we were reading textbooks, science textbooks, every single sentence that we were taking it for granted as a fact, chances are it was like somebody's PhD, like maybe 2-3 PhDs. So it was 10-15 years of hard work, right? And so it, you know, in the grand scheme of things, your science, even as a career, ends up being somebody's paragraph somewhere, right? You know, yes, if we're in the middle of a pandemic and somebody's science solves everybody's problem in the world through a vaccine or something, that's another situation that happens once in a century, right? But usually you need to remain humble. And so get out of the building, talk to people who are actually end users. So that's the whole notion of customer discovery in iCore. And if people are telling you it's bad, listen, right? Like, don't argue. So.
Awesome. So,
Get out of the building, Amir. That was great. That's a great quote from iCore. I love it.
Right. I would say also maybe Joel can talk about being a scientist and getting to the, you know, real world, right? So I think you guys all have things to share here. I don't want to be the sole speaker. Am I missing anything?
I just want to say best move ever. Sorry for all scientists, but yeah, I made a transition from research to business and I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, Joel and I left the same lab at around the same time. Wonderful. So Amir, since this is a meetup for early stage entrepreneurs, I want to finish with one last question. So what are 3 concrete steps that early stage entrepreneurs can take now if they want to start working with a research institution?
3 concrete steps if they want to work with a research institution.
Yeah, what advice do you have to just get started with that process?
Absolutely. I would say much like anything else, much like, you know, choosing a job, it's never about the job. It's actually about who you work with, right? So you choose a boss. Choose a boss as opposed to choosing a job. Much like, you know, personal relationships and marriages. You know, when you start something as a co-founder, or when you share IP, to Naveed's point, right, with an institution, or whether it's just a general partnership with an institution, it's a marriage. It's a business marriage, right? So I would say interview them as much as they're interviewing you, and make sure you incentivize them, because I'm just thinking about, you know, my colleagues at tech transfer office at Hopkins, like the number of knocks they get at their door, people who are trying to have Hopkins brand outside entities, it's overwhelming, right? So how are you different than others, right? So, and I think this is not a new lesson, right? Like, you know, everybody who goes through an incubator, accelerator, they're being taught about value proposition, right? So you need to make your case. So the first step is like, get out of the building, listen to others, but really listen, because you need to understand if you're solving a real world problem, an unmet need. And you also, second thing you need to understand is like, second step is your solution the right solution? Your solution may be the most perfect thing technically, right? But if you're a scientist, it may not be the most cost effective from industrial perspective. If you're in an industry, it may be, for the lack of a better term, maybe it's insulting, maybe a soft science for academics, right? So you need to incentivize the other party. So I would say that those are the 3 things: get out of the building, listen, understand the problems, then try to work. Second thing is value proposition, everything. And third thing is like, choose the people you're partnering up with, because it's important. I've seen so many good ideas going south with a bad team, and I've seen so many mediocre ideas sticking around and making money and monetizing things, because, you know, a good team makes things happen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was amazing. So does anyone have any quick questions before you wrap it up?
I do have a little question. So Amir, like in my job, I work a lot with academic entrepreneur. Like they come to me, they want to get in the market, but they're not ready yet. So usually I refer them to our partners at our incubator, accelerators. I'm just wondering, like from your perspective, like what would make like the best partner Like, what do you look for in like an incubator or accelerator on an academic perspective?
Boy, that's a tough question. So if I understand the question, how do you find an incubator and you say, yes, this is the right incubator? Okay. I would say it's almost like, almost like the marriage that I talked about, right? It's like a business marriage. So it's obviously I've seen much more failures than successes. So like, don't take this the wrong way. Like I may have a little negativity in my answer, but I think it's, make sure you interview the other person. And if there's something off, like you want to start off with small and like you want to have many homeworks to work together over that. And if you see red flags, you want to pass over that. I think a lot of times I've seen that people sign up for the wrong environment, incubator accelerators, because they don't understand their own needs. So I would say the first thing you need to do is independently do a little bit of a soul search, not for yourself, but for the company, right? Again, like you are not your company, that's a different entity. Once you do your own soul search, you need to understand what it is that you need. I was surprised how many people don't know the difference, at least students, the difference between an incubator and accelerator, right? Once you realize what it is that you need, then go and ask for it. Because chances are, if you knock at the door of an incubator or accelerator, they're going to say, absolutely, we want you. And they're going to ask for a lot of percentages. And I think that's also usually what I've seen people fail. They end up committing to giving a lot of shares and later on they regret. But you know what? If you team up with the right people who bring investment, who bring like education, who will give you the support structure, who will tell you, hey, this is a grant you can apply to. This is the right time for that grant. I think you need to do your own cost benefit as an entity, company entity, to see that that equity that you're giving away, is it worth it or not? I think usually a lot of these fights I've seen during that transition is about that equity. And I think there's no right or wrong answer, but it's really important to know that what you're giving away, is it worth what you're gaining? And you also don't want to overestimate yourself, because as a new company, you really don't have much to offer. So, but again, it's about people. If you find the right people, that company may be a bad idea. You start another company with them, right?
Yeah, I agree, Amir. I mean, don't be greedy. I mean, if you're at the stage where you definitely need help and you've gotten as far as you could go by yourself and you do need the financial help, obviously don't give away, because you're going to dilute your ownership of the business. But, 10% of a billion-dollar company is a whole lot more than 100% of $1 million company.
I would agree. I founded our business incubator here in Frederick, Maryland, which intent was to draw out scientists from Fort Detrick, which represent all 34 different governmental entities, are all in 300 acres in one compound. They realized over time that all the botanists from the Navy, the Army, the Marines, the Department of Defense, they were all testing the same botanicals and the same zoonicals, and they realized we should just all collaborate in one place. So to be fair to Frederick, Maryland, the CDC sends the good shit up to us. So we had as an entrepreneur, trying to draw scientists out of their lab coats and their Petri dishes and providing them through a collaboration with SAIC. They allowed them off hours to use the millions of dollars worth of equipment they use every day, off hours to promote their entrepreneurial, federal, and commercialization. So it's a beautiful thing done right. They're definitely different personalities, and you got to know who your audience is and how to interact with different types of scientists who think they're entrepreneurs, but they're really not.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you really said it well, Paula. I think, again, it's about the people you work with, right? And as an entity, you make that decision. And I think I kind of want to change the topic a little bit to investors now that I kind of got the chance to do that. I think same goes with investors. I think, one of the biggest mistakes I made was if somebody's giving you money, you get excited because, there's money at the table, but money is, rarely free. And the more cash poor you are, the more that money is going to cost you, the more expensive the same amount of money is going to be. And what I figured later on is that it's not about money. It's actually the person who's giving that money, whether they have the right network and resources in your field, right? They can pick up the phone and can help you with the FDA approval. They can pick up the phone and help you do manufacturing. And I think that's one thing you can get out of an incubator and accelerator, right? That network, resource, or even investment is something that can either help or hurt depending on who you team up with. So.
Yeah. No, we were fortunate. I mean, we timing wise, we put wet labs in, we put in all of the equipment that would be, necessary as rudimentary equipment, the eye wash station in the middle of the hallway. And we received $1 million from TEDCO to build that incubator. And in Maryland, we're outperform every other incubator in the state. And I think it's because an entrepreneur took on a scientific, why wouldn't you commercialize that? I would meet these people at Fort Detrick as alliances and these scientists at NCI and on the board of hospitals and our colleges. And I'm like, why do you keep it secret? What is this wall that you never think, wow, there's a commercial application for something that might be very DARPA centric, that might be very secretive, but we had an aerosol company come through that could reduce the amount of whatever it was that comes out bad of aerosols. And he used it in terrorist attacks to see how much bad chemicals were in with the oxygen in the air. Well, what he realized is he had a better aerosol can than Clairol did for hairspray. And we commercialized the heck out of that company, because when you have a marriage of people who have an expectation of what your product is supposed to do, and you have somebody from the outside like me, I'm not from healthcare. I see this cachexia, starvation, killing a third of cancer patients as the most egregious thing I've ever heard that nobody's ever talked about. But you need an outside opinion sometimes to push things forward, to show a different perspective. And, we forced our scientists to go through, brown bag lunches to learn how to write patents. Naveed, to your point, we have a patent fund at TEDCO. TEDCO, as I know your sponsor, and I sent a message over to you. I'm like, God, I should have been, pro TEDCO here. There are resources out there, and I know at TEDCO, and I hope nobody's on the phone from TEDCO, but as a board member, we rejected less than a third of applicants. And of the third that were rejected, we gave them the right answers to come back, because they didn't know how to do the form, Amir, the SBI process, all of the bureaucracy for entrepreneurs and for scientists it's a new world. And it's, unless you have those skills innate or learned, as you all have, I'm flying blind right now, and I have a great idea. I need a clinical trial partner. We've got the offers, but, Amir, to your point, who do you want to work with? Is it the big name or somebody you feel like you could collaborate better with?
Great points. Thank you so much, Paula. So yeah, this was great discussion. Thank you so much, Amir. I can also speak to, my transition from, being purely an academic researcher to trying to be an entrepreneur. And Gil's not here anymore. I was going to ask him to describe the MDC studio, but when I was first trying to learn, all these business concepts from scratch, I realized, I had no business background. I needed help. And I'm also not an engineer and trying to develop a medical device. So for me, it was just the right fit. MDC Studio is, it's a startup studio developing a lot of health and medical technologies and there's a lot of emphasis on early prototyping there. There's actually most of the people on staff there are young engineers, and they've helped to make our, first ugly prototypes. So so I, for me, that was just, what I needed what I needed at the right time. So thank you. Yes. Did someone have a question? Oh, okay. So yeah, thank you so much, Amir. That was really great. And and is it okay if people contact you with any questions later on?
Absolutely, by all means. And thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation. And nice to meet you all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Along that line, will you have all the people's contact information that's available?
Yes, I have the contact information for anyone who signed up. Let me know if you want any specific contacts. Actually, Amir, is it okay or can you drop off your email in the chat?
Absolutely, yeah. It's Amir Man, M-A-N, at jhu.edu. It's simple to remember. No dots, no space, nothing.
Okay, I have a broken hand. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I just typed it out. So Amir, A-M-I-R, my first name, and last name, M-A-N, Man, Mary Apple Nancy, at JHU, Johns Hopkins University.
Gotcha.
.edu.
Thank you.
He just put it in the chat, and I'll put my email in the chat as well if anyone wants to follow up.
And now, as always, thank you so much for setting everything up. This has always been, all the talks have been very interesting.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Cyrus.
thank you.
And also, Cyrus is our next speaker. So our next meetup is on September 23rd, and Cyrus will come back again to talk about product development for medical applications.
Interesting. Great.
Looking
Thank you.
forward to that.
And I'll talk to you, Cyrus, next week. So
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a good evening.
you
Cheers.
too. Take care.
Thank you.